The dust storm came without warning. A furious wall of sand and grit swept across Rattlesnake Canyon, transforming day into twilight. The howling wind carried death on its breath, not from the stinging particles that scoured exposed flesh, but from the muzzle flashes that punctured the amber haze. One shot, then another. The unmistakable crack of a Winchester Model 1873. Caleb Steele watched from his cabin doorway, weathered face impassive beneath the shadow of his hat. At 45, he wore his years like the leather of his well-used holster, cracked but resilient. The scar beneath his jaw traced a jagged line where an Apache blade had nearly opened his throat during the campaigns of '74. Another scar, hidden beneath his shirt, marked where his own knife had nearly taken his life 6 years ago. The third shot decided matters. "Damn it all," he muttered, reaching for his Colt Single Action Army .45. The revolver's walnut grip fit his palm like a natural extension of his hand. 6 rounds freshly loaded that morning, a habit from his scouting days. His Winchester leaned by the door, oiled and ready. 6 years in the 7th Cavalry during the bloody Apache campaigns, and another 6 alone in this canyon, had taught Caleb one immutable truth. Survival wasn't about strength. It was about distance from trouble. Yet trouble had found him anyway. The gunshots came again, followed by a woman's scream cut brutally short. Caleb wrapped a bandana across his face, slung his rifle, and stepped into the storm's fury. Outside, the air tasted of copper and grit. He moved like a shadow across terrain he knew by heart, tracking the sounds through the amber haze. The dying light painted the red rock formations in shades of blood and rust. He found the dead horse first, fine breeding, expensive tack bearing the brand of the Blackwood estate, not a traveler's mount, but a rich man's property. Blood trails led away from the animal toward a narrow fissure in the canyon wall. Caleb crouched, reading the story written in the disturbed earth. 2 sets of boot prints following smaller, lighter footprints. A woman running, men pursuing. Then signs of a struggle, more blood. His jaw tightened. He'd seen what happened to women caught alone in these canyons too many times during his cavalry days. His hand moved unconsciously to the jagged scar beneath his jaw, a permanent reminder of what men were capable of. The blood trail continued into the fissure, narrowing to a cramped passage that opened into a small cave. Caleb moved silently, every sense alert. The cave smelled of blood and fear. In the dim light filtering through the narrow entrance, he saw her, a woman pressed against the far wall, one hand clutching a wound beneath her ribs, the other holding a knife in a trembling grip. Her long black hair hung in wild tangles around a face both fierce and beautiful. From her features and the remnants of her deerskin dress, now torn and bloodied, he knew she was Apache. Her dark eyes locked onto him immediately, alert despite her obvious pain. "I'm not here to hurt you," Caleb said, his voice rough from disuse. He lowered his rifle slightly but kept it ready. "Those men who were chasing you?" "One dead," she replied, the single word carrying neither remorse nor fear. "One escaped, but more will come. They always do." She tried to stand and immediately collapsed, the knife clattering to the stone floor. Caleb moved forward instinctively, catching her before she hit the ground. She felt light in his arms, burning with fever, yet her grip on his shirt was surprisingly strong. "You'll die out here without help," he said. The woman looked up at him, her eyes unnaturally bright. "We all die, Caleb Steele. The question is what we live for first." Caleb froze. "How do you know my name?" A small, pained smile touched her lips. "I know many things about you. The scar beneath your jaw from the Apache warrior who nearly killed you. The deeper scar on your chest that no one has seen. The nightmares that wake you every night at the same hour." A cold feeling washed over Caleb, having nothing to do with the cave's chill. Who are you? Elena, she whispered, daughter of Red Wolf, keeper of visions for my people. Her eyes rolled back as consciousness left her. Caleb hesitated only a moment before lifting her carefully. The decision was made before he even acknowledged it. He couldn't leave her to die, no matter how unsettling her words had been. The storm had intensified again, painting the world in shades of amber dust. Caleb carried Elena across his threshold, the first person to enter his home in over 4 years. The significance wasn't lost on him. Every person he'd ever cared for had eventually died because of that care. It was the curse he carried, the balance the universe demanded. His cabin was sparse but orderly, a single room with a stone fireplace, rough wooden table, 2 chairs, and a narrow bed in the corner. Shelves held books, one of his few indulgences, and the tools of survival. He laid Elena on his bed, quickly assessing her condition. The wound was deep, a knife thrust beneath her ribs that had missed vital organs by mere inches. Infection had already set in, evidenced by the angry red streaks radiating outward. Without treatment, she wouldn't last the night. Caleb worked methodically, heating water, gathering his limited medical supplies. He'd learned field surgery from necessity, not training. As he cut away the bloodied fabric around her wound, he noticed a small leather pouch secured around her waist. It had been hidden beneath her dress, protected even during her desperate flight. He hesitated, then carefully removed it and set it aside. Whatever it contained had been important enough for her to guard while running for her life. Cleaning the wound revealed its severity. Caleb's hands remained steady as he extracted fragments of a broken blade, sterilized the wound with whiskey, and prepared to stitch it closed. Throughout the procedure, Elena remained unconscious, though pain occasionally registered on her face. When he finished bandaging her, Caleb examined the leather pouch. Inside, he found a folded piece of paper, yellowed with age. One half contained a crude map with landmarks he recognized from the territories to the north. The other half held something unexpected, what appeared to be lyrics to a song written in 2 languages. The English portions stirred something in his memory. Soft sunlight breaks through morning mist. Dust motes dancing like spirits in the air. Remember, warrior, your strength comes not from steel, but from those who walk before. The words trailed off, continuing in Apache script he couldn't read. But the partial verse haunted him. They were from a song his mother had sung to him as a child before the fever took her when he was 8. How could an Apache woman possess words his mother had sung? Words he'd told no one about in all these years? Caleb folded the paper carefully and returned it to the pouch. The coincidence, if it was coincidence, unsettled him deeply. He spent the night in his chair, rifle across his lap, watching both his patient and the door. The storm raged on outside, a fitting accompaniment to his troubled thoughts. Elena's fever peaked near midnight, her delirious murmurs shifting between English and Apache. He caught fragments, warnings about the judge, pleas to unknown ancestors, and once, his own name spoken with such certainty it chilled him. Dawn broke with unearthly stillness as the storm finally passed. Golden light filtered through the shutters, falling across Elena's face. Her eyes opened, clear and alert in a way that suggested the fever had broken. She studied the cabin, taking in every detail before her gaze settled on Caleb. "You saved my life," she said. Not a question, not gratitude, a simple acknowledgement of fact. "You needed help." He handed her a cup of water. "Drink slowly." She obeyed, watching him over the rim of the cup. "You want to know how I know your name?" "Among other things, I am the keeper of visions. Only one woman in each generation bears this gift. We see what others cannot. Past, present, future, the boundaries blur for us." "You're saying you're some kind of seer?" Caleb couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. "I'm saying I dreamed of you, Caleb Steele, long before I knew your name. Her dark eyes held his, unflinching. I've dreamed of you since I was a child, standing in flames, carrying a small girl from a burning village. Caleb's blood went cold. No one knew about that night, the raid on the Apache village in 1879 that had gone wrong, the orders he'd refused to follow, the child he'd rescued against commands. It had cost him everything, his career, his honor, very nearly his life. Coincidence, he muttered, turning away. Someone told you stories about me. The scar on your chest, she continued as if he hadn't spoken, 3 inches below your heart, made by your own knife the night after the raid, when you nearly took your own life out of shame. Caleb's hand moved unconsciously to his chest, feeling the raised line beneath his shirt. He'd been alone that night, drunk on whiskey and self-loathing in a room at Fort Redemption. No one had ever seen that scar, no one living at least. What do you want from me? To complete what your mother began. The words hung in the air between them. Caleb felt as if the ground had shifted beneath his feet. My mother was a settler's wife who died of fever when I was 8 years old. Elena's expression softened slightly. Is that what your father told you? Before he could respond, she continued, Margaret Steele was much more than a settler's wife. She lived among my people for 3 years before she married your father. She learned our ways, our language, our songs. She and my grandmother created something together, a bridge between our peoples. She gestured to the pouch. You found the song. It's just an old lullaby, Caleb said, though uncertainty crept into his voice. It's half of the warrior's hymn, a song of power that can bring peace to those who have died in violence. Your mother wrote the English verses in 1854. My grandmother, the Apache. Together they form a whole. Elena's voice grew urgent. I need to reach Thunder Valley before the full moon. Judge Blackwood wants what I carry. The map to Thunder Valley and half of the warrior's hymn. He believes there's gold there that will make him rich beyond measure. Blackwood. Caleb's interest sharpened despite himself. Judge Clayton Blackwood had a reputation throughout the territories, a man who administered his own brand of justice, backed by hired guns and political connections. Some called him fair, others ruthless. All agreed he was dangerous. Why would a territorial judge care about an Apache song? Because it leads to Thunder Valley, a place sacred to my people, hidden in the mountains where the spirits of our ancestors can be heard on the wind. Blackwood believes there's gold there, a mine of immeasurable wealth. He doesn't understand that the true treasure cannot be held in mortal hands. A sound outside caught Caleb's attention. He moved to the window, peering through a narrow gap in the shutters. Dust rose on the horizon, at least 6 riders following the path from the main trail. Looks like your friends have found us, he said grimly. Not friends, Elena replied, attempting to rise. The effort caused her face to pale, but determination kept her upright. Blackwood's men. They'll kill you and take me. They can try. Caleb checked his rifle and revolver with practiced movements. Can you ride? She nodded. If necessary. It's necessary. There's an exit path through the back of the canyon. Little known, difficult terrain. You're coming with me? Surprise colored her voice. The approaching riders represented everything Caleb had sought to avoid: violence, complication, involvement. The rational choice was to send her out the back while he delayed them. She'd likely die, but that wasn't his concern. Yet something held him back from that cold calculation. The lullaby, perhaps. The mystery of his mother, or simply the realization that his careful isolation hadn't brought him peace, only a different kind of prison. I'll get you to the next trading post, he said finally. After that, you're on your own. Relief and something deeper flickered in Elena's eyes. The spirits chose well. The spirits had nothing to do with it, Caleb muttered, gathering essential supplies. Save your strength. We leave in 5 minutes. They rode through terrain few white men had ever traversed, narrow passages between towering red rock formations, dried creek beds that became death traps during flash floods, slopes of loose shale that could break a horse's leg with one misstep. Caleb navigated by instinct and experience, leading them northward. By midday, he had spotted the telltale dust of pursuit. Blackwood's men had found their trail. At a ridge offering visibility and defensibility, Caleb surveyed the landscape through his brass spyglass. 6 riders, moving in tight formation. The lead rider sat straight-backed in his saddle, silver hair catching the sunlight. Not a hired gun, but Blackwood himself. Caleb positioned himself on an outcropping overlooking a narrow ravine. He checked his Winchester, confirming the 15 rounds in its tube magazine. The rifle could fire a .44-40 cartridge accurately to 300 yards in the right hands. His hands were better than right. "Stay hidden," he told Elena. "If this goes wrong, keep heading north. Find Samuel Crow in Frontier's Edge." When the riders entered the ravine, Caleb took a deep breath, steadied his aim, and squeezed the trigger. The lead rider, not Blackwood, tumbled from his saddle. The second shot struck a rock near Blackwood's head, sending stone splinters flying. The third hit another rider's shoulder. Chaos erupted. Horses reared. Men scrambled for cover. Caleb fired methodically, creating the impression of multiple attackers. When return fire came, it was panicked and inaccurate. After emptying his rifle, Caleb slid down the backside of the outcropping, rejoining Elena. "That won't hold them long. We need to move." They rode hard until sunset, when Elena's strength finally gave out. She nearly fell from her saddle, saved only by Caleb's quick reflexes. "We need to stop," he said, feeling her forehead. The fever had returned. They made camp in a small box canyon. After tending to Elena's wound, which had begun to seep blood again, Caleb built a small fire, shielded from distant view. "Tell me about this warrior's hymn," he said as they ate a sparse meal of jerky. "What's so important about it?" Elena studied him in the firelight. "During the Great War between our peoples, many died without proper passage to the spirit world. Their souls remained trapped, restless. The warrior's hymn, when sung in Thunder Valley during the full moon, creates a bridge between worlds, allowing these souls to find peace. And the healing waters my mother wrote about in her song? The valley holds a spring with remarkable properties, water that can heal both body and spirit, not just wounds of flesh, but wounds of the soul." Caleb's hand moved unconsciously toward his chest, toward the self-inflicted scar that marked his darkest moment. "Sounds like superstition to me." "Says the man who believes himself cursed," she replied without judgment. They fell silent, the crackling fire filling the space between them. "We should reach Frontier's Edge by tomorrow afternoon," Caleb said finally. "Samuel Crow might help us. If what you've told me about my mother is true." "Samuel will help," Elena said with certainty. "He was your father's friend, even after the truth was hidden." Frontier's Edge appeared on the horizon late the next day, a cluster of wooden buildings surrounded by scattered homesteads. Caleb approached cautiously, alert for signs of Blackwood's men. Samuel Crow's cabin stood apart from the main settlement, nestled against the eastern slope. Smoke rose from its stone chimney, a sign of habitation that both relieved and apprehensive Caleb. The cabin door opened before they reached it. A silhouette appeared, a man in his 70s but unbent by age, his silver-streaked black hair falling to his shoulders. He stood perfectly still, watching their approach with the patience of one accustomed to waiting. "Samuel Crow," Caleb called, reining in his horse a respectful distance away. The man stepped forward, lamplight falling across features that bridged 2 bloodlines, the high cheekbones and copper skin of his Apache heritage, the blue-gray eyes of his white father. Those eyes widened as they took in Caleb's face. Robert Steele's boy, he said, his voice surprisingly strong for his years. You have your father's look about you. His gaze shifted to Elena's slumped form. And you've brought the Keeper of Visions at last. She needs help, Caleb said, avoiding the implications of Samuel's words. She's been stabbed, the wound's infected. Samuel nodded once, turning to re-enter the cabin. Bring her inside quickly now. As Samuel tended Elena's wound, he confirmed everything she had told Caleb. Margaret Steele had indeed lived with the Apache, had created the warrior's hymn with Elena's grandmother, and had been murdered by Clayton Blackwood, not taken by fever as Caleb's father had claimed. Your father lied to protect you, Samuel said, unwrapping a bundle containing the rest of the warrior's hymn, written in Margaret's flowing script. Blackwood had power even then. Your father feared that pursuing justice would only lead to your death as well. Before Caleb could fully process this revelation, a sound froze him in place. Riders approaching. He moved to the window and saw 8 horsemen surrounding the cabin, Blackwood at their center. We've got company, Caleb said grimly. Samuel moved to a cabinet, removing an old Spencer carbine and ammunition. This rifle belonged to your father. He left it with me after Margaret died. Caleb took the weapon, feeling its weight, both physical and symbolic. The Spencer was a veteran of the Civil War, a 7-shot repeater that had helped win the Union cause. Cover the back, Samuel said. I'll take the front. When they come, make every shot count. The cabin became the center of a storm of leaden splinters. Caleb fired methodically, making each shot count. When one rifle emptied, he switched to the other, maintaining a steady rate of fire that kept the attackers pinned down. A cry of pain told him Samuel had been hit. Caleb glanced back to see the older man slumped against the wall, blood staining his shirt. Samuel! I'll live, the man gritted through clenched teeth. But we can't hold them much longer. The Apache girl, she must reach Thunder Valley. A plan formed quickly in Caleb's mind. I'll create a diversion. When they focus on me, get Elena out through the tunnel. Head north to Thunder Valley. Samuel's eyes widened. That's suicide, boy. Maybe. Caleb reloaded both rifles. But someone has to finish what my mother started. Before Samuel could argue further, Caleb moved to Elena's side. She was awake, her dark eyes reflecting the firelight. The full moon is tomorrow night, she said softly. We must reach Thunder Valley by then. Samuel will get you there, Caleb replied, checking his Colt revolver. I'll buy you time. Elena's hand caught his wrist, her grip surprisingly strong. You carry the English verses of the warrior's hymn. Without both parts, the song has no power. Then memorize my part, Caleb said impatiently. It doesn't work that way. The song must be sung by those connected to its creation, a child of Margaret Steele and a keeper of visions. A bullet shattered the window above them, sending glass raining down. Caleb shielded Elena with his body, feeling shards bite into his back. There's no other way, he insisted. There is. Samuel's voice came from behind them. The older man stood in the doorway, blood soaking his left side. The root cellar, hidden compartment, leads to the hills behind the property. He pressed a small leather pouch into Caleb's hand. Supplies, medicine, map to Thunder Valley. Now go, both of you. I'll hold them here. Samuel, your mother believes some journeys choose us, not the other way around. Samuel checked his Spencer's chamber. This one has chosen you, Caleb. Don't waste her sacrifice. They slipped into the root cellar as Samuel returned to the front window, firing steadily to cover their escape. The hidden passage was narrow and dark, forcing them to crawl through damp earth for what felt like an eternity. When they finally emerged among the foothills behind Samuel's property, the gunfire had stopped. In the distance, flames rose from the cabin, Blackwood's final solution. Caleb watched in grim silence, another death to add to his curse. Then he helped Elena onto her horse, mounted his own, and rode north toward Thunder Valley, toward a destiny his mother had foreseen 3 decades earlier. Thunder Valley appeared before them at sunset of the following day, a hidden paradise nestled among harsh peaks. The valley floor flourished with unexpected greenery, fed by streams that joined at a central pool. Even from this distance, water sounds enveloped them, as if the valley itself breathed. Caleb felt it immediately, a presence, a significance that transcended the physical beauty. The air seemed charged with potential, with memory, with voices just below the threshold of hearing. "It's real," he murmured, the sight momentarily overwhelming his skepticism. "Did you doubt?" Elena stood beside him, her expression serene despite the difficult journey. They descended into the valley as twilight gathered, making camp near the central pool. As darkness fell, the stars emerged with startling clarity in the thin mountain air, their light casting pale shadows across the stone. Elena sat near their small fire, removing the leather pouch that contained her half of the warrior's hymn. Caleb hesitated, then joined her, withdrawing the pages Samuel had given him. "Tonight, the moon will be full," Elena said quietly. "We should practice the song before then. It must be sung precisely to awaken the waters." Caleb stiffened. "I told you I don't sing." "Everyone sings. Some have simply forgotten how." Her dark eyes reflected firelight. "Your mother's journal mentioned that she sang to you as a child, that you had a clear, pure voice." The memory surfaced unbidden. His mother's gentle hand stroking his hair, her voice weaving stories and melodies in the twilight. The comfort of those moments, lost for so many years beneath grief and anger. "That was a long time ago," he said roughly. "Some things once learned are never truly forgotten." Elena placed her pages beside his. The Apache verses intertwine with the English. The song is incomplete without both voices, just as healing is incomplete when only one side remembers. Her voice rose into the stillness, soft but clear, singing words in her native tongue that spoke of mountains remembering, of waters carrying the voices of those gone before. When she nodded to him, Caleb reluctantly joined, his voice rusty from disuse, but finding the melody with surprising ease. "The warrior's path is marked with blood, yet wisdom comes through wounds endured. Remember, child, your strength comes not from hate, but from the love of those who came before." Their voices blended into harmonies that lingered in the air. The sound bounced off stone walls, amplified until ghostly voices seemed to join them from across time. Caleb faltered. "What is that?" "The valley recognizes the song," Elena explained. "Tonight, at the central pool beneath the full moon, the effect will be much stronger." Before they could continue practicing, Caleb heard it, the distant sound of hooves approaching the valley's entrance. Blackwood had found them. "Get to the central stone," Caleb ordered, reaching for his Winchester. "I'll hold them at the pass." Elena caught his arm. "Without you, the warrior's hymn cannot be completed. Then we'll have to delay them until moonrise." Caleb surveyed the terrain, identifying defensive positions. "The pass is narrow. One man can hold it against many, at least for a while." They moved quickly, gathering their supplies and heading toward the valley's entrance. The stone formations created natural choke points where a skilled marksman could control the approach. Caleb positioned himself on a ledge overlooking the main pass, both rifles at hand. Elena remained nearby, hidden but ready to support him. The riders appeared in the twilight, Blackwood leading a group of 6 men. They approached cautiously, alert for ambush. Caleb took a deep breath, steadied his aim, and fired. The Winchester's report echoed through the canyon. A rider fell. The others scattered, seeking cover. "Clayton Blackwood," Caleb called out, his voice carrying in the valley's strange acoustics. "This ends here." "Caleb Steele," Blackwood's cultured voice replied. "Margaret's boy, all grown up. How fitting that you should die in the same place as your mother's precious Apache friends. The words confirmed everything Samuel and Elena had told him. Rage burned in Caleb's chest, but he kept his breathing steady, his aim true. You murdered my mother, he called back. Tonight, you answer for it. Blackwood laughed, the sound chilling in its confidence. Your mother was a traitor to her race, as are you, it seems. The exchange had served its purpose, revealing Blackwood's position. Caleb fired again, the bullet striking Stone inches from the judge's head. What followed was a deadly game of cat and mouse. Blackwood's men attempted to flank Caleb's position, while he shifted from cover to cover, firing just enough to keep them pinned down. Each shot had to count, ammunition was limited, and moonrise approached. As the eastern sky began to lighten with the moon's imminent appearance, Caleb fired his last rifle round and drew his Colt. He'd thinned Blackwood's force to 3 men, but his position was compromised. A bullet grazed his shoulder, tearing flesh in a line of fire. Another struck the rock beside his head, sending stone fragments flying. The moon rises, Elena whispered from nearby. We must reach the central pool now. Caleb nodded, firing his remaining rounds to cover their retreat. They ran through the darkness toward the heart of Thunder Valley, pursued by Blackwood and his remaining men. The central pool spread before them, a perfect circle of still water. At its center stood a small island dominated by a single standing stone, its surface covered in ancient carvings. The Singing Stone, Elena explained breathlessly, where the warrior's hymn must be performed. As they reached the water's edge, the full moon crested the eastern ridge, casting silver light across the valley. The water began to change, its normal transparency acquiring a luminescent quality, as if the moonlight were not merely reflected, but absorbed and transformed. We must begin now, Elena said, arranging the pages before them. A gunshot interrupted her, the sound cracking across the valley like thunder. Blackwood and his men had reached the pool. Take cover! Caleb pulled Elena behind the standing stone as more shots followed, bullets striking water and stone around them. Caleb, steal! Blackwood's voice carried easily across the water, amplified by the valley's acoustics. I know you're there, boy, hiding behind Apache skirts just like your mother did. The taunt was calculated to provoke, and Caleb felt anger rise within him. This wasn't just about capturing Elena or finding Thunder Valley. It was about finishing what Blackwood had started 30 years ago with Margaret Steele. We need to complete the song, Elena whispered urgently. The moon approaches its zenith. Hard to sing with bullets flying, Caleb replied, checking his Colt. He had 2 rounds left. Using the standing stone for cover, Caleb fired his remaining bullets, forcing Blackwood and his men to seek shelter. Then he turned to Elena. Start singing. I'll join when I can. Elena began to sing, her voice rising clear and strong above the gunfire. The effect was immediate. The waters of the pool, already luminescent with moonlight, began to pulse in rhythm with her song. The whispers surrounding them coalesced into more distinct voices, joining Elena in a ghostly chorus. Blackwood's men faltered, clearly disturbed by the manifestation. One dropped his weapon entirely, backing away in superstitious fear. Only Blackwood himself seemed unmoved, his expression hardening into determination. He dismounted, drawing a pistol from his belt. Silence that witch, he commanded, before she completes the ritual. Caleb, weaponless now, made his decision. He turned and joined Elena's song, his voice blending with hers in perfect harmony. The English verses weaving through her Apache words to create a sound that seemed to resonate from the stone itself. Let barriers fall between the worlds. Let silence yield to voices long unheard. Remember, child, in unity the broken find their wholeness. In forgiveness, the warrior finds his peace. The pool's surface swirled into a vortex of luminescent energy. Whispers formed words in dozens of languages, somehow comprehensible to all who heard. Blackwood and his men froze. A column of light rose from the water, reaching toward the moon. Within it, shapes appeared, human figures taking form. The dead. Hundreds spanning the valley's history. Apache warriors, settlers, soldiers, and civilians. All victims of conflicts that had scarred this land for generations. And among them, growing more distinct as the song continued, a face Caleb recognized from faded photographs and fragmented memories. Margaret Steele, her features softened by the watery medium, but unmistakable in their essence. "Mother," he whispered, the word nearly lost in the song. She smiled, a gesture of such profound love that Caleb felt tears spring to his eyes. Beside her stood another figure, an Apache woman of similar age, bearing the same tattoo as Elena, the previous keeper of visions, Elena's grandmother. The two women moved toward the center of the column, their spectral hands reaching for each other across the division that had separated their peoples in life. As their fingers touched, a pulse of energy radiated outward, washing across the valley in a wave of blue-white light. Blackwood's scream cut through the moment, a sound of rage and denial. He charged forward, firing his pistol repeatedly at the column of light, at the spectral figures, at Caleb and Elena themselves. "It's not real," he shouted. "None of it's real. There's gold here, not ghosts." The bullets passed harmlessly through the watery apparitions, but one found its mark in Caleb's side, the impact driving him to his knees. Pain blossomed, hot and immediate, yet strangely distant, as if part of him remained anchored in the song rather than in his physical form. Elena moved to help him, but he shook his head, gesturing for her to continue singing. Her voice faltered momentarily, then strengthened, carrying the melody forward as Caleb struggled to rejoin despite the pain. Blackwood reached the island now, wading through the shallows with single-minded determination. His face was contorted with a hatred that transcended rational thought, the culmination of a lifelong crusade against what he could not understand or control. "You'll die like your mother," he snarled at Caleb, protecting things that should be destroyed, believing in fairy tales instead of progress. He raised his pistol for a final shot, but before he could fire, the column of light surged forward, engulfing him in its luminescent embrace. Blackwood screamed again, this time in terror rather than rage, as the spectral figures surrounded him. Caleb couldn't see exactly what Blackwood witnessed within that embrace, but the effect was devastating. The judge fell to his knees in the shallow water, pistol dropping from nerveless fingers, his face a mask of horror and recognition. Whatever judgments he had passed in life were now being returned to him 1,000-fold by those he had wronged. Through it all, Caleb and Elena continued the warrior's hymn, their voices blending in perfect harmony as the moon reached its zenith directly above the pool. The song built toward its crescendo, Apache and English verses, culminating in a final shared refrain that bridged the division between languages. The circle closes, broken made whole. The waters remember what hearts try to forget. Healing flows like rivers to the sea. Peace returns on wings of forgiveness. As the final notes faded, the column of light slowly subsided, returning to the pool's surface in a gentle rain of luminescent droplets. The spectral figures dispersed, their forms dissolving into mist that settled over the valley like a blessing. Blackwood remained on his knees, shoulders slumped in defeat or revelation. His men had fled, abandoning both their leader and their mission in the face of forces they could neither understand nor combat. In the sudden silence, Caleb became acutely aware of his wound. The bullet had entered his side, lodging against a rib. Blood soaked his shirt, warm and persistent. He pressed his hand against it, trying to stem the flow, but darkness encroached at the edges of his vision. "Caleb!" Elena was beside him, supporting his weight as he swayed. "Hold on. The waters, they can heal you." At the pool's edge, she bathed his wound with water still glowing from the ritual. The liquid flowed like living light over his injury. The sensation was extraordinary, a deep warmth reaching beyond flesh to something essential. Pain gave way to tingling awareness as the waters worked their magic. The warrior's hymn awakened the valley's power, Elena explained. These healing waters, protected by my people for generations, are far more valuable than gold. Caleb watched in astonishment as the bullet wound began to close, new tissue forming before his eyes. Within minutes, only a pale mark remained where the injury had been, a scar that would fade with time, unlike the deeper one on his chest. "How is this possible?" he murmured, touching the healed area with cautious fingers. Thunder Valley exists at the intersection of worlds, physical and spiritual, seen and unseen. The waters draw power from both, especially when activated by the warrior's hymn. Caleb's gaze moved to Blackwood, still kneeling in the shallows, seemingly oblivious to their presence. "And him? What happens to him?" "He has seen truth," Elena said quietly. "The faces of those he killed or ordered killed. Their pain, their fear, their final moments. He experienced them all. Some minds break under such knowledge." As if hearing himself discussed, Blackwood looked up, his eyes, once sharp with authority and hatred, now holding the vacant stare of a man whose foundations had crumbled beneath him. "I saw her," he said, his voice barely audible. "Your mother and all the others. They showed me everything." He shuddered visibly. "So many. Too many." Before Caleb could respond, Blackwood spoke again, his words slightly more coherent. "The woman, Margaret Steele, she said something to me, a message for you." He looked directly at Caleb. "She said, 'The curse ends here. Choose life, not isolation. Complete what we began.'" The words struck Caleb with the force of physical impact. They were precisely what his mother would have said, what she had tried to teach him in life. The validation of her presence, her continued connection to him despite decades of separation, overwhelmed his customary defenses. "What happens now?" he asked Elena, his voice unsteady. She gazed across the valley where dawn light had begun to touch the eastern peaks. "We have completed the warrior's hymn. The division is healed, at least in this sacred place. Those who died in violence have found peace, and the waters, their healing power, will remain accessible to those who approach with pure intentions." Elena's expression grew solemn. "But they must be protected, kept from those who would exploit them for profit or power." The implication was clear. Someone needed to serve as guardian for Thunder Valley to ensure its gifts were respected and properly used. The responsibility his mother had accepted, then passed to Samuel Crow, now awaited new stewards. "You're suggesting we stay," Caleb said, the concept both alarming and strangely appealing. "Become caretakers of this place." "I am suggesting we fulfill the roles we were born to." Elena's voice held certainty without demand. "You are the son of Margaret Steele, inheritor of her vision. I am the last keeper of visions of my people. Together we could bridge worlds as they intended." Caleb looked out across the valley, now transformed by morning light. The pool had returned to its natural state, though subtle luminescence still shimmered beneath its surface. The standing stone gleamed, its ancient carvings more distinct after the night's events. And all around them the land itself seemed renewed, vibrant with possibilities. For so long he had defined himself by what he had lost, by the walls he had built, by the connections he had severed. The curse he carried was indeed of his own making, a shield against the pain of further loss, but also against the joy of true connection. His mother's message echoed in his mind. The curse ends here. Choose life, not isolation. complete what we began. As the sun cleared the eastern ridge, Caleb made his decision, not with words, but with actions. He helped Blackwood to his feet. The once powerful judge followed with the docility of the profoundly altered, offering no resistance when Caleb bound his hands. "We'll take him to Frontier's Edge," Caleb said. "After that, we'll return here." Elena studied him, perceiving the change in his purpose. "You've chosen, then." Caleb nodded, looking once more at the valley spreading around them, at the healing waters, at the standing stone where his mother's spirit had appeared. "I've chosen to complete what they began." His voice carried the certainty of a man who had finally found his true path. It's time the curse ended, for all of us. As they prepared to depart with their broken prisoner, Caleb felt something he had not experienced in decades, the sensation of possibility, of future unbound by past, of hope unclouded by fear. And somewhere in the space between worlds that Thunder Valley represented, he sensed his mother's approval, her joy, her final peace. The warrior's hymn had found its voice at last.